Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us today, July 9th. It is 5:15, and we're here at our Planning, Economic Development, and Land Use Committee. Can staff please do a quick roll call for us?
Adams.
Present.
Halloran.
Here.
Clark is absent. Hoey.
Here.
Zamer.
Here.
4 present. We're also joined by Councilmember Conti, City Clerk Shaniqua Jackson, Corporation Counsel Robert McGee, Legislative Director Nez, Junior Legislative Aide Carly Johnson, and Executive Director of the Albany Parking Authority, Sean Palladino.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody, for joining us today again. And we are going to start with Resolution 62.6225R. Who's the sponsor of the resolution? Okay, so Councilmember Kimball is not with us, but we do have the Executive Director of the Parking Authority. So if you don't mind taking the hot seat and just give us a little information about this resolution that you're asking.
Thank you all. I'll make this pretty quick for everyone. So we were approached to try to find some land for parking in the warehouse district up around the Copper Crow area on Learn Street and Ferry. We were able to come to a lease agreement with an LLC for $2,500 a month. We believe it's going to greatly help the congestion in the area, specifically on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday evenings. And the lot is only about 120 spaces. I'm sure we're all wondering why I'm here too, because the way our enabling legislation works, it has to come across the council's table to get approval for any lease agreement for the parking authority.
Okay, any questions from committee members? Councilmember Hoey.
Thank you. The lease, how many year lease is it?
It's
It
going to
might
start.
be in here, but I didn't see it.
Oh, that's okay. It's going to start with the 1 year, so we get a feeling for how it's going to go, and then we have some extensions built into the agreement.
Now, with the extensions, can they raise the price?
Yes. Yeah, they can raise it by a couple, 1 to 2.5%.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions by committee members? Councilmember Adams.
Yes, thank you for joining and explaining some of what you said. But for the parking that will be there, will that be, again, still accessible to people like after hours, or is there new conditions under those?
Yeah, it'll be accessible 24/7. We will be accepting monthly parking as well for any new developments in the area. But we do expect it to be more hourly to start.
Okay. All right. And so again, the parking spaces will also be made available to nearby tenants who live downtown in that
That's
area?
right.
Okay.
Yes.
Councilmember Zamer.
Thank you. Quick question. So is this going to be, the public will be able to pay for their spots on the Parking Authority app?
That's right. Yep. It'll work just like our lots on Central Avenue. Same model.
Great, thanks.
Yep.
Any other questions from committee members? Any questions from non-committee members? Okay. Well, at that point, I ask for a motion to move forward with resolution 62.62.25R with a passive recommendation.
Make a motion to move forward with resolution 62.62.25R with a positive recommendation.
Is there a second? Okay, second by Councilmember Hoey. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so it passed unanimously. Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank you
you
for
all.
taking your
Thank
time
you.
with us today. Okay, and next we're going to move to ordinance 3.41.25. This is our continued conversation on the cabaret licensing. I'm going to allow Councilmember Conti to start the conversation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, at the last meeting, we discussed the draft that was introduced, and there were some, part of that discussion, there were some recommendations or suggestions for amendments, and there were additional comments that were received outside of the committee meeting, and reviewing it, there were some additional amendments that were made. So your agenda has the existing draft, which is clearly marked, existing draft, and I apologize for the lateness, but we did get to the committee, which is in the packet that you have, a revised amendment, which is labeled proposed amendment, which many similarities, but does incorporate some of the recommendations that we heard at the committee meeting and some additional committee recommendations that we heard. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. McGee to just walk through and review what the changes were from the draft that was originally introduced and the proposed draft that's in your packet, if that's okay. Proposed, the one marked proposed amendment.
Okay,
You have that one, Alfredo?
I've got two existing drafts.
Yeah, just keep on going existing,
No.
and then you should come to one that's clearly marked proposed amendment.
Okay, I've got it, thank you.
Okay.
Just want to make sure everybody has it.
Yeah, and then if Rob can,
Yeah, sure. So I'll just go over the changes that have been made since the version we looked at back on June 25. And there are really 7 changes. The first, it relates to transferability of a license. So now we've made it so a license is transferable as of right, as long as the new licensee provides updated information to the clerk's office. The planning department has been removed as a reviewing agency just to kind of cut down on the red tape and streamline things and make things a little easier for the clerk's office. We've also shortened the review time. We've shortened the time in which a temporary license can be issued, so it goes from 45 days to 30 days. And then we've also rewritten it so that the clerk's office doesn't need to actually issue a temporary license at that point. As long as the applicant has submitted a complete application, that application will be deemed a temporary license if there hasn't been a decision within 30 days. We've added a sunset provision, so it will sunset after 4 years as long as an alternative has been put in place. We've added a definition for the term ambient, which applies to some of the exceptions. And then we've made some just housekeeping amendments to other sections of the code that referred to cabarets.
Councilmember Zamer.
Thank you. Can you just, so right now, what are the departments that need to review an application?
It's just the police department and the building department.
Okay.
that takes out 3 departments out of the existing law.
Right.
Councilmember Howie?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Before the meeting, I talked to Council Robert McGee. I would like another change, and I know we don't like to do a lot, but this is in committee, and this would be an opportunity to put in another amendment. My concern is the department review procedure. It's 30 days, and I know we shortened it from 35 to 30. I would even leave it at 35, but I think, at some point, the automatic temporary renewal, it's causing a lot of overhead in the whole process. It leaves a lot of doubt, with the person who's applied for this license. It's cumbersome. Now, I did talk to the council. He explained some of the reasons that might come up where they got to at least hold off, for the first, temporary license to the next one. But at some point, we got to say, that's it, you know? You can't leave somebody hanging forever. And the way this is written, it could go on, you know, waiting for a review and keep every 30 days getting renewed at a certain point. So my feeling is, I'd like to just have it, you apply, you know, within, my feeling was 45 days, one way or another. Do I, you know, am I allowed to open up this cabaret or not? It's up to the departments to respond. And, you know, if they have problems responding, maybe they need to ask for more money in the budget to get more people, but there's really, at some point, we got to say, the bureaucracy here is just too much. And that's what we've heard from a lot of the people that came in and testified, how long it takes to hear whether they got it or not, and that we're being obstructionist. I think we got to put it down in a reasonable amount of time, and that should be it. So I'd like to offer that as an amendment. I don't know, you know, it's up to the maker, of course, but I just think it makes sense, and it'll make people a lot happier.
Okay,
I'm
so just
confused
to-
as to what the difference, don't we, isn't it 30 days from the application being submitted, that there needs to be a response from the city? Is that correct?
Yes, that
Isn't
is in the
So
law.
what are you saying? I'm not
They don't
clear.
have to respond, and it automatically.
And then and then it becomes a temporary, or,
Yeah, so the law does require a response within 30 days. And then if there is no response within 30 days, the applicant gets an automatic temporary license. So that 30-day-old application is deemed a temporary license. And we had discussed the possibility of issuing a permanent license if there wasn't any response within 30 days, and there was some pushback on that from the city. I mean, and there's a couple reasons for that. I mean, number one, the delays in review, you know, there are good reasons for those sometimes, like if an applicant hasn't provided enough information or they're not responding to inquiries from the department. And then two, you know, if there wasn't the possibility of kind of extending the review time, the departments, when in doubt, they're simply going to deny the application within the 30 days and force the applicant to submit a new application and go through the process again, rather than give them more time. So that's why we have this temporary process in there, so that the applicant knows that they can start operations essentially after that 30 days, no matter what, you know, assuming they haven't gotten a response. And it gives the departments time to get information that they might need from the applicant in order to ensure that they're making a proper decision on approval.
thank you. Can I hear from, sorry,
okay,
I just want to hear from the clerk about
Councilmember
take.
Zamer, and then Councilmember Conti, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just going to ask if we could hear from Ms. Jackson about a take on this.
Yeah, I've shared my concerns about the continuous 30-day temporary license renewal. It's definitely going to cost a lot more time on the clerk's side to continue to issue a 30-day, every 30 days until we receive a determination. I agree with Councilmember Hoey, 45 days is reasonable. We should have a response within the 30, but giving them 45 days to respond, or any department to respond, it should be more than enough time to get a response back to my office. We tend to receive more of a response from some departments versus other departments sooner rather than later, but 45 days, it should be more time. It should be more than enough time. We should not have to continuously issue a temporary license over and over and over again until a determination is made. It's going to put not just more time on my office to do that, but for the owners, it's going to just leave them in limbo.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I
Councilmember
agree on the
Conti.
continuous, if there's no limit on how many times you have a continuous extension, there has to be at some point a stop. And I'm just wondering, and the way we're doing it also, the applications are now not all, you know, January 1 through December 31st, and we're doing 3 years. So you're reducing some of that, and you're not getting hit all at once, you might say. But I'm also wondering, what are the circumstances, because most applications should be fairly cut and dry in terms of departmental review. and we're limiting it to just 2 departments now. And I'm wondering, what are the complications that a department might run into that causes that the 30 days is not enough time to be able to review and submit an application? And I also agree that there might be certain applications which are more complicated where they might need a little bit more time. So I'm just trying to process all of that to provide some flexibility, but not to have a continuation of extensions. Maybe it's a one-time extension. Or if you want, if you draw out the time frame from 30 to 45, are they just automatically going to sudden delay everything to 45, which could be done in 30 or less? So I don't know, I'm just processing all of these different scenarios.
I mean, I don't know what departmental reviews, what they take into consideration, because I'm not privy to that information. But the holdup would, from what I've seen, it could be with an inspection to the location. So the fire has denied based on they couldn't schedule the inspection. But all the other factors in regards to the application, there is no delay because all the required documentation is submitted to me, which in turn is presented to the various departments.
So fire's going to be out of it now.
Right. Right.
And I don't know to what
So I don't know
extent.
what APD's determining factors
Yeah,
are.
APD looks at other issues they wouldn't do, and that maybe calls, service, whatever. And buildings, I don't know to what extent they might go in, because,
I've never had an issue with buildings
Yeah.
in the delay in response. They're
Right.
pretty fast in their turnaround. And again, the only holdup that I've experienced is with APD.
Okay.
And there is no justification on to, why they hold up. We continuously reach out to get a response, but there's no response in return.
and they take in excess of 30 days, typically,
Always,
always.
always. I tend not to, I don't get a response until one of the council members reach out to me and I
Yeah.
let them know that, hey, this is the department I'm waiting for, and then council members reach
Yeah.
out to the department head over there, or chief.
So, if you were to extend it to 45 instead of 30, then for everybody, is that?
Yeah, the specific number was one, I think we've been 45 days, 30 days, I don't think it makes a huge difference. And so like just one point of information. Under the changes since the last meeting, there's no further action required from the clerk in terms of issuing the temporary license. It's deemed issued, so there's not like continuous paperwork that has to come from the clerk's office in order to maintain the continuous reviews. And just to provide an example of a reason why a review might go on,
So what you're saying is that when you issue the temporary after the deadline,
He's saying I don't issue a temporary one, so how would they know that they are allowed to operate
right.
under a temporary?
So the law, the way it's written, is that if there's been no decision on an application after 30 days, it is deemed a temporary license. So if there's an issue where we came to them and said, oh, you're operating a cabaret without a license, they have the fact that they've submitted an application and it's more than 30 days old, and so they haven't gotten, so they essentially have that temporary license.
it's automatically deemed without the clerk having to do anything except to notify the applicant that you received the license.
Exactly. So once the clerk's office accepts it, and they're not going to accept an incomplete application,
Yeah.
that applicant knows if I haven't gotten a response in 30 days, I automatically get a 30-day temporary cabaret license.
But in terms of it being a final application, no longer temporary, the clerk is still waiting,
I'm still waiting for
For
departmental's review.
department, whatever the
Yes,
delinquent
right. So
department is.
right, and I can't speak to specific delays within APD, but I mean, the example that was just brought up is a pretty good one. So the fire department, they got the cabaret license application, they reached out to the applicant and they said, we would like to do an inspection to make sure you have your exit signs and your sprinklers and everything else. And the applicant wasn't cooperating, or at least they didn't hear back from the applicant, or the applicant didn't answer the phone. So they weren't able to sign off on the cabaret. They weren't able to say the space was safe. And it's those kind of examples that, it's easy to imagine extending out review time. So a good example, or like what I was just talking about with Councilman Hoey, was that you know, if the building department is looking at a cabaret license for a particular space, they might notice that the sprinkler inspection is out of date. And that's something that the building owner or the premises owner needs to take care of, and they usually do that. They're supposed to do that through a third-party inspector because it's a particularly complicated system. And if the applicant or the building owner takes more than 30 days or 45 days, et cetera, to get them that information, they're not going to be able to sign off on it. And if you don't have a temporary license process, the building department's just going to deny it after 30 days to ensure that, you know, there's people, they just ensure that it's not being operated unsafely. And it does create a situation where an applicant could delay with the review in order to get a permit that's automatically reviewed, or automatically approved, you know, for going past the deadline.
So in terms of Mr. Hoey's suggestion, clerk's concern, you recommend you keep it as is right now, or is there any accommodation?
We can speak again with the departments, but I really, when we talk to the departments, they did stress that they need time sometimes to work with an application to make sure their space is safe to operate a cabaret, and that can take a certain period of time. We can go back to them with the proposal again. I mean, when we talked about it, this was several months ago, so.
One other question, which is not in here, but separate, maybe you're aware, in terms of what is it, the certificate for public assembly that they're required to have based on inspection, is that done yearly, or is that done, how often is that done?
That's a BRC, so that they provide that certificate to me with
Right.
their application, and I believe it is a yearly
Okay,
permit.
all right.
from
So on a
BRC.
yearly basis, BRC is inspecting the premise.
They're inspecting the premise before it even gets to me. This is just in order for
Right.
them to operate, right?
Yeah,
So-
it's separate from the license provision.
Yes,
They're doing
yes.
that, they're inspecting it, they're looking at issues of occupancy, they're looking at other issues, they're looking at the sprinkler issue, I
Just
assume,
for them to open,
and
right?
everything just to open
But
and
in
to
addition
remain
to-
open.
In addition to cabaret, I'm not, I don't know if there's any other
I
criteria
don't-
that they follow. I would be curious to know if there is and what that looks like. But again, I've never had an issue with delay in a response from BRC. It's always been from APD.
I would think in terms of buildings, they probably already have the information they need on file based on other things they're required to do, that they don't need to do anything beyond what they're required to do.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, I've got a couple of questions that patient council members. I have Tom and then Deb. Oh, okay, well then, that's fine, Deb, and then Tom.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councilman. I just want to clarify, so if there's, within the 30 or 45 days, if there's an issue with like sprinklers, if there is a response and from one of the city departments, and there's an issue found, and they're working with the owner, obviously then there's no permit is going to be issued. Then it's just a 45 or 30 days or 45 days, whatever we decide, for a response from the city? Meaning, you said if there's your example, if there's a sprinkler issue,
Yeah.
and the owner needs time to fix that issue, and that extends longer, you had said that extends past the 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
But isn't that window for a response from the city to the application, meaning within that time frame?
Well, precisely. So, yeah, so if we're talking about creating a hard, like, automatic approval after 30 days or 45 days or whatever the case may be,
That's if there's no response from the city to the application,
Correct.
correct?
well, I think that the way it's written is there needs to be a decision on the application after 30 days. So it's not that they haven't, or whatever the time period.
Because that doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, if the city's trying to work with the applicant to bring their space into regulation,
Yeah.
then
Well,
the time frame has to be,
Yeah, it has to be
changing,
flexible.
Has to be flexible.
Right, yeah, exactly. Yeah, so there's flexibility built in there. I guess you're right. We could be more specific about creating kind of a third path where there is an ongoing dialogue between the applicant and the departments. I guess my reading of the way we've drafted this was that was implied, that there would be that back and forth, right?
Yeah, I guess I was confused, right? I think you had mentioned that this could lead to the potential of an applicant taking their time so that their license will just kick in, even if an issue has been uncovered by one of the departments. Is that?
Well, that was a hypothetical where you had a hard, there's been if you haven't gotten a response, there's an automatic approval. So you could have an applicant saying like, look, I can game out this process for a certain period of time, and then you run past that 30 days, and then there's an automatic approval. But I said the departments are going to react to that by essentially denying before that 30 or 45 days, which again requires everyone to do all this over again. So
okay, yeah, it seems to me that it needs to be clear that the applicant and the city, if they're working together in order to bring the establishment into regulation.
Yeah, we can make that more explicit for sure.
Yeah, and in the discussion, I got a question. I'd like to take out the review by APD. I mean, if you think about it, is APD looking at sprinklers or safety issues? But buildings and codes are, and buildings and codes have been responsive. So why don't we depend on that department? And if, APD has a problem, they could reach out to codes and say, we have an issue here. When you go in, can you take a look? Or the fire department, for that matter. Now, that's one thing. My other thoughts are, an establishment has a sprinkler problem. We're going to allow them to open up or give them a temporary license while there's a safety issue there? Yeah, and now codes will say, I mean, we got to let codes do their work as far as the safety of the building and stuff like that. We're trying to make this as flexible as we can. And just leaving it open that a department can stall and not answer, to me, it's just not right. And we know that there's a shortage. We're both on the Public Safety Committee. We know we're down 90 police officers in the city, and we'll probably be down more. Maybe they just don't have the manpower, and maybe we can ask building and codes to, do maybe a little bit more on their inspections when they go in, so we could try to make the process just a little bit better. Thank you.
So just point of clarification. So the cabaret is separate from their occupancy permit. So by the time they are going through the cabaret process, they should have already received the occupancy permit. I guess there's a question. So is that one of the requirements that they need to submit, documentation that they have an occupancy permit?
They have to submit all their documentations and inspection from the various departments to my office with their application. And then we in turn reach out just to verify that it is still valid. The establishment is not closed. I reach out and get the premise history report from APD, and all of that is part of the file, part of the application.
Okay. So just to be clear for the record, all of the permits that the establishment needs to be able to open and all of those safeguards have already been done, have already been approved, and is part of the package that they submit to the clerk's office to get their cabaret license. So I'm going to allow Councilman Conti to speak on the second request for an amendment. I'd like to put out a potential compromise on the 30 and 45 days temporary and permanent. I understand why a business would want to have a permanent license as quickly as possible to have some clarity in how they're going to run their business and how they can plan business, 2, 3, 6 months ahead. So if, suggestion for the sponsor, maybe we do a 30 days window, and if there's no denial in those 30 days, a 60-day temporary permit goes into effect, giving the city and the establishment 60 additional days to figure out what they need to do. And if there's no denial within the full 90 days of submitting the application, then they get a permanent application, a permanent license. So that's just something for the sponsor to consider. And at that, I'll give it to Councilmember County.
Yeah, no, just wondering, many of the permits, the building permits, et cetera, are out there. It's just a matter of accompanying that with the application. And as I say, the public assembly inspection happens yearly, where this is a 3-year license. So even though it's a 3-year license, they're still subject, which is separate to the building inspections, the public assembly. The issue of the police look at whether or not the records, premise records, if there have been any issues at the premise, or if there's a need, they might, have a perspective where they might put some conditions on the license that might mitigate potential issues, public safety issues. That's what the police looks at, which is a legitimate thing for them to look at. They usually, they might sometimes put conditions on, which is usually consistent and often with what the applicant says they're going to do regarding hours or days or things like that. So that's the role of the police department. I think they're an essential component of the review process. And yeah, I think if we can come up with something on the temporary issue, et cetera, and I don't know in terms of what the chairman suggested as far as a 30 days and then a 60-day temporary, or no more than
That's what I was suggesting, a 30 days window
respond
for
within 30, and then you
responding.
issue the temporary, which lasts for
60
60,
days.
which preserves the right of a department to give final recommendations within that window, which I think is also still a long time, but if that's, does that seem reasonable?
I'm trying to get us a compromise here. So I mean, if people want to shrink, I'm not married to this. I'm just trying to see if we can start talking about
I think
some.
saying that after the comment period is 30, if they haven't submitted within that 30, it's automatically deemed a temporary. That temporary continues to 60, and then after that it becomes permanent, but you have that window within which the department can still submit any recommendations or conditions that they may not have been able to. I mean, I think that's reasonable.
I'm going to allow Corporate Counsel to answer, and then Councilmember Zama.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I can propose that to the building department and the police department. I know, again, I'll just say what their response was to a hard automatic approval in the past was that is effectively going to be an automatic denial because they're going to deny it rather than let it just approve or be automatically approved without their having all the information they need or having reviewed the application. But, I mean, again, I'll talk to them about it.
Councilmember Zama, and then Councilmember Adams.
Thank you. So the issue I had raised before, and Councilmember Hoey about safety, those are covered in other inspection requirements for all businesses, so that's not really an issue relevant to the cabaret, correct?
Well, I mean, I'm not sure that is true, because you could have a CO issued. I mean, you get a CO when the building is built or there's been a major renovation, and then that CO kind of exists going forward. But a lot of things can change in a building without the building department necessarily having been made aware of it, especially when the building is changing ownership. So one of the opportunities that the cabaret license system provides is for the building department to take a fresh look at the space and make sure it's safe. So, I mean, I don't think it's accurate to say it's not part of this.
Then sorry.
Yes, but yeah, so but you're right,
Okay,
the more
but if there
comprehensive.
is something egregious that's found, rather, if you would just want building department to have another avenue rather than denial, if they could work with the applicant to fix that, and it falls outside of, and it'll take longer than whatever time frame, 30 days, or you don't want to necessarily automatically issue a license if there's an egregious issue
Yes,
that's uncovered, right?
right, that's true.
So just to make sure that there's a mechanism for that possibility.
Yeah. Well, and that
Well,
is-
and that's exactly what we're looking to avoid. So like if there is an automatic, let's say like, you know, we get a cabaret license and, you know, for clerical reasons, the application like falls under somebody's desk and it never gets reviewed, and then 90 days comes and goes. We don't want to put the city in a position where they've approved the use of the space and that's not safe. And, you know, God forbid somebody gets hurt. So that's the concern
Yeah.
that I've heard about the automatic approval deadline.
Councilmember Adams?
Couple remarks. First, just as to this conversation that you guys are just having, I'm confused as to how the cabaret, again, plays an effect with the safety side of things, because a business is already opened and functioning without a cabaret. So the safety concerns that you're mentioning while bringing up the cabaret relates to what purpose? Because the business is already operating. Them playing amplified music or using entertainment does not change anything. So I disagree with that notion there and that point, but the question and concern that I'm asking to bring up to get clarification on is the definition change of the legislation. Reading it, the purpose or the intent is still the same, but for some reason, we're changing the name from cabaret to accessory entertainment. So trying to get the understanding as to what is the purpose behind that. And then secondly, if the intent and definition between the cabaret legislation and the now accessory entertainment encompasses the same thing, again, what is the intent behind this? Because the language is pretty much exactly the same, but I will point out that with the accessory entertainment, you're now trying to include every possible business location, a room, anything under this new law. Whereas before, that was not under the cabaret. So again, I'm looking for the explanation and the intent of this. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Conti, if you want to.
Well, you know, a cabaret is a defined form of entertainment, and for some reason it was used in this context. But when you say cabaret, and I've had plenty of instances where there are cabaret fundraisers where it's a defined form of entertainment where it includes a variety of different entertainment, which might be music, might be spoken word, might be different things. And so really, what we're really talking about here is accessory entertainment, which is amplified entertainment, which is accessory to the principal use. So cabaret has always been an appropriate term and not one that really fits within what we're talking about, because it is a defined form of entertainment that predates all of this. The other part is, I think when, you know, an establishment, when they add accessory entertainment, there's a difference than what they might, you know, it's an accessory use, which is different from what the primary use was, and it could have different impacts one way or the other. So there is a difference. I'll let Rob talk to the definitional issue, but the definition was trying to clarify some of the, I think, confusion and ambiguity that previously existed as to what was covered and not covered, and to make it clearer. But that was the whole idea of trying to streamline and clarify some of the definitional issues.
Yeah, I mean, there was, as far as the changing the term cabaret to accessory use, I think you covered the reasons for that. You know, this the new definition, though, it does carve out certain things. There was some ambiguity in the earlier law, for instance, if, as to whether or not a restaurant that plays music in the background required a cabaret, required a license. We've clarified that it does not. And then we've carved out an exception for small establishments that just have like an open mic night or something like that. So those no longer need a cabaret. They would have needed a cabaret license before. They don't need one now. And then to speak to the safety concerns, I mean, another safety issue that does come up in this review is sometimes people use a space that's not designed as an event space as a cabaret. So for instance, like if a restaurant hosts, they might host a rock show or something. Under the building code, there are different requirements for spaces that are used in different ways. It's a different type of use, so there are different safety concerns that the building department would need to weigh in on. So that's just another way in which safety comes into the cabaret license review, or the accessory entertainment license review.
Councilmember Adams?
That was not very detailed an explanation to really answer my question, to be honest with you. But again, I could have thought that the purpose and what Richard said was the intent was to fix this application process. So here we are, again, repealing the cabaret, but still using the cabaret term. It gets very confusing, Rob. It gets very confusing. And when we try to pass this off to people and new business owners and explain to them the reasoning behind this, it's going to be confusing. Because again, what is the intent behind changing the name? People who already wear the name, if you're trying to change the name to try to dispel the negative nuances that come with it, again, this does not address the intent of what we're supposed to be doing, which is addressing the application process and streamlining. Now, you're also then going into the USDO to now repeal the definition of the cabaret, which you can do, but when I tried to bring this up during our past meeting, it seemed to be a problem. So you can repeal, go into the USDO, find all the locations where the conflict or conflicts arise in terms of the language, and in this accessory entertainment legislation, remove that, implement this as the new system moving forward, but at the same time, the legislation as it continues to read towards the bottom, one second, let me find it. Again, under section 3, under the proposed. We then, under section 3, the definition of the cabaret, as contained in the section 602 definition of the article 3 use regulations in chapter 375 of the USDO ordinance, the general legislation is repealed and a new entitled definition, accessory entertainment, is added to the above as follows, or added to read as follows. The use of any room, place, space of public assembly for the purpose of live musical entertainment, singing and dancing, and excluding the following below. So as you mentioned, you're trying to encompass different types of businesses who use different types of models, but at the same time, you're continuing to make businesses or force businesses to have to adjust to now a new setup, because now what they were doing, if we're talking about a tavern on Cloven Avenue who is a restaurant bar but has a additional space in the back room that uses that for events, now you're saying that place will have to get an accessory unit to be able to hold functions like that for soccer games, baseball games, functions that happen in the neighborhood. They would need accessory entertainment
I mean,
permit, pretty much.
well, I guess like the examples you provided don't include live entertainment, so no, that, in that case, you wouldn't need a license. And just to say, it's like the any room, place, or space language came from the original definition of cabaret, and we did get rid of the term cabaret because it's antiquated, and we thought accessory entertainment was better at describing the kind of things we intended the system to apply to. So those are the reasons for that. And I should say too that the law, that there's a part of the law too that says if you have a cabaret permit now, that becomes an accessory entertainment license going forward. So there's nothing, if you have a cabaret license now, there's nothing more you need to do. You don't need to reapply.
And so the other mention that I have is Section 7, towards the end. This ordinance shall take effect 30 days after its enactment into law, provided, however, that the amendments made to the Chapter 111 of the Code of the City of Albany by Section 1 of this ordinance shall be deemed repealed and of no further force in effect 4 years after the effective date of this ordinance, provided, however, that such repeal shall only be effective to the extent that the Common Council of the City of Albany has adopted an alternative mechanism for the regulation of the accessory entertainment through Amendment Chapter 375 of the Code of the City of Albany. Can you please explain into detail exactly what does that mean and how does that play out?
So yeah, Richard, do you want to?
When we discussed this at the last meeting, we were talking about this being an interim step and to provide immediate relief to the overall objective maybe of moving to a system where you didn't require a license, but it was an accessory use under a land use system. But that was more complicated, going to take more time. So the idea is we'll put this in place now. It streamlines the process, provides immediate relief, goes to a 3-year license, but during that 4-year period sets the stage for the council, if they wish, and this probably will be the next council, to then take the deeper dive into the USDO and how do you structure accessory entertainment within the zoning ordinance without the need for a licensure provision. So the repeal is there, but it's not a repeal, do nothing, and then everything goes away. It's a repeal, but with the stick in a sense that it only goes away if you come up with the alternative system. And so that was the intent of the language there. The people wanted a repeal, so we put the repeal in to provide the time to work on something different, but to provide an incentive really to come and, to come up with that alternative system rather than just have a repeal that goes away in 4 years, nothing's been done, and then there's nothing in its place. So that was the intent there. If it would take, less than 4 years if people really dig into it to try to come up with something different, but that's the intent. Immediate relief, set the stage for a longer-term process, and do it that way. I also want to note, the cabaret ordinance was put in place in 2013, I think, 2012, 2013, long before we did the rezoning in the USDO. So when USDO was being done, cabaret was already there. The whole system, the two were integrated together, and it was designed at the time to work together as one system. So any changes you make in the licensure provisions, including what is really accessory entertainment, you have to make those concomitant revisions in the USDO as well. And so the language has to mirror each other. And that's part of the issue there.
And just to mention, still to that point, with changing the language right now to accessory entertainment, you still have to do that same exact task, which is one of the points that I brought up with my repeal. And people were looking for a repeal of this legislation, not of the term. Like, we're trying to sell people on something that's not actually true. As we repealed the cabaret, that's not true. We are just renaming the cabaret to encompass more people with this legislation, more businesses with this legislation. So, you know, that's just my comments about just reviewing it right now. I'll yield and allow the conversation to move forward.
I don't think
I appreciate that.
I don't think it
do-
expands.
I'm sorry.
Because it does streamline and reduces the obligations, goes to a 3-year license. But here's the problem, again, because the two, as I said last meeting or a couple of meetings ago, the USDO provisions and the licensure provisions and the way they were designed when USDO was done, it was integrated into one system, so you can't just repeal the license provision and leave the other provisions hanging. It's confusing, and there are no standards. So again, what you needed to do, if you're going to repeal the license, you have to do things in terms of changes on the USDO side to make those revisions whichever way you want. But you can't just repeal the license and not deal with the other side. And that was the problem with the straight repealer. It didn't deal with the other side, and therefore left this bifurcated system that could cause confusion, and there were no real standards. There were no use standards, because all the use standards that go with an accessory use were incorporated into the license provision. So you can't get rid of one without dealing with the other side.
Okay, I appreciate that good back and forth between my fellow council members. I think that's always good and healthy, so thank you for that. As we move on this specific ordinance that's in front of us, are there any other specific concerns or specific amendments that members would like to bring up for consideration? Okay, hearing none, at this point, what I'm hearing is that, or what I've heard from this conversation is that members would like to consider extending the temporary, or more importantly, creating a permanent process after an X amount period of time. Does that seem fair to what I've heard? Okay, so if that's the only compromise we're still working on, how long, I'm going to ask this to Corporation Counsel, how long do you think before you can get some feedback from the department so we can meet again and get a vote on this piece of legislation? Because as of right now, we are still under the old system, and the old system is much more burdensome than even what we have in front of us. So I just want to make sure we can get this moved.
Can I make a recommendation on that? And Rob, since what you're recommending is the 30-day time limit and then 60-day temporary after that, correct?
That was one idea to get the conversation moving forward, so we can get.
That's the only amendment that I'm really hearing right now. And then, and I do want to, if we're going to move this through, move it forward, because it would have to be amended at a meeting, and then after it's amended at a meeting, it would require a public hearing. And, you know, that's, and I do want to get this done as soon as possible. So I'm wondering if it can be moved out with that recommended amendment, and we can get feedback before the next council meeting, which is going to be 2 weeks from this past Monday. And I'm pretty sure that it's going to be okay, but I don't know. But, you know, if it's okay, then we can just amend it at the next meeting and then set the stage for a public hearing. If there's some alternative that they want, we could probably have enough time to make an adjustment that we can do. I don't know, I'm just trying to find a way.
To get us moving
Or
forward.
if it's okay, then maybe you just do a quick meeting, planning meeting, that you can schedule real quickly, just to report it out with that amendment. But it would be nice to be able to get this amended if we're doing something. I'm sorry. at the next council meeting, which is, I forget, July, whatever it is.
Okay, so if
I just want to try to, how can we speed this up?
okay, so just one quick clarification. It was Councilmember Hoey's suggestion to go for permanent, full staff permanent, and it was supported by the council members. So I want to say my suggestion was more of trying to get a compromise on this issue. So if I'm hearing, Councilmember Hoey, I'm gonna go to you next. I just want to make sure I'm hearing what you're saying, Councilmember Conti, correctly. You're saying we put in a suggested amendment with a time frame, vote that out today, allow that to go to the council, and then allow the process to continue, and if there's pushback from the department, we still have time to come back and make changes. Okay, so that's
Something like that, or we take it back, and if that's the only issue, then I don't know if you can schedule maybe a quick meeting prior to the next full council meeting, which is July 21st, correct. Yeah, I mean, it would just be, because the only thing that would happen at that meeting would be
The
a vote
amendment.
on it. It would just be amending. It would just be amending it. There's no vote on that one. Yeah, because if we have to, right, it has to be amended, and then there has to be a public hearing, which would have to happen at the next one, so.
we may have quorum problems for the committee. Councilmember Hoey.
Yeah, I really like the compromise. Thank you. You always seem to come up with these ways of trying to get stuff through, but there's always a but in life, isn't there? I'm taking a tougher approach that, you know, we're the people who make the laws for the city, and we can take recommendations from department heads and commissioners, but at the end of the day, it's our decision on how we want to see things run. We're elected, we represent people in our wards, and we're a legislative body, and I think we need sometimes to act as one. Now, you could say, well, you know, if the departments complain enough, the mayor could veto it. But I think this is important enough. I think we would get the votes. I believe we would get the votes strongly if we had to do an override. So I just want to, you know, this has been going on too long, Council, and it's just, at some point, we got to move forward. We can listen to some of the, you know, the complaints. I think it's a great idea what Richard said. Let's get this moving. But I think we got to put a little bit of squeeze on the department heads and explain to them why this is important to us. I know you've been at a lot of our meetings. We've had an awful lot of people come in and talk about it. You know, we had two of our council members wanted totally to get rid of the law, and you know, I think this is a good compromise, as Alfredo says, let's move the process. I think 4 years is a lot. I'm hoping we can get this done in a year or two in the USDO and the next council, or maybe at the end of this council, but it's a lot of work for our committee because we're going to be involved. It's going to be a lot of work for council and our council to dig through the USDO, get all the sections that need to be changed and amended, to get that information together and get it passed. And plus, we'll have to go to the planning board, planning department, to get any changes to the USDO. So it is a long process, but I think we can do it, and thank you again for listening to me.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is, I'm using that a lot lately, yes, I'm working on my conflict resolution skills. You like to make a friendly amendment to be voted on today, and Councilman Conti, you seem to be favorable to that.
Yeah, so it would be, departments have 30 days to comment. After that, if they have, comments have not been received, and then we're only talking about 2 departments now, it would be deemed a temporary permit for a 60-day period, and after that, unless there are department objections that change that, after that, it would automatically become permanent. Is that understanding?
That's what I've heard. Everybody feel good with that?
Yeah, I just want to, so the first 30-day period is to issue a decision favorable or unfavorable to the applicant. Okay.
And within those 60 temporary days, they can still be denied. And not to mention that a license can be pulled at any time if these departments find that they've violated any of their, requirements. So I mean, I think we have a lot of safeguards. Okay, just for clarification, we're looking at section 11169, approval of licensing. I just want to make sure it's clear as possible. And we're looking at C, section 1, to add language on that paragraph, to change temporary license from 30 to 60. The temporary license continuing, and language stating with a to 60 again, 30, 60 days period until the time applicant is denied, or it's denied, or if 90 days from the applicant's initial submission has passed, it is then becomes permanent. Does that sound, I'm looking at you, Rob. Does that sound legally sound? Yeah, we can drop it. Okay. Okay, so can I get a vote on this? I don't think we need one since it's a friendly amendment, but just so that it's on the record, to amend section C of the 111-69 area, section C, 1, to make the temporary license 60 days with a 90-day window for denial or a permanent licensing approved after 30 days. Did I say that? Okay. Do I have a motion to move that?
So moved.
Okay. So that's the first, second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So that's three in favor. Abstain or no? No. Okay. So 3 in favor, 1 no. So we can get that language put into the ordinance for the next council meeting with that language put in. Are there any further amendments anyone would like to discuss? Seeing none, is there a motion to move ordinance 3.41.25 out of committee with a positive recommendation as amended?
I'll make a motion to move ordinance 3.41.25 out of, with the amendment,
As amended, yes.
as amended, with a favorable recommendation.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? 1 nay. Any abstentions? Okay. Ordinance 3.41.25 passes with a positive recommendation. So, thank you all for your time today. Do I have a motion to
Motion to adjourn.
adjourn? Excellent. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everybody. Okay, before we all leave, committee members, can we get staff some dates that you're available in late June? I think we've got a couple of days out there. Dates that you're available in June. July, why did I say June? I'm sorry, my mind's, yeah. Because we're trying to have another committee meeting in July to talk about parking. So we've got some other hot topics, guys. Okay, thank you, everybody.